Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to another edition of Pelicans Daily, brought to you by Fan Arch. I am your host, David Grubb, editor in chief of thebirdrights.com. And another game day for the Pelicans. We're running out of them, only three remaining, including today, as Pelicans are on the road visiting the Milwaukee Bucks. Of course, Pelicans played the Bucks last weekend. And this will be the second and final game of that series. The schedule got changed around due to snowstorm in the winter, so Pelicans didn't get to play the Bucks then. These games got compressed, so play now. And for the Pelicans, this game doesn't mean much again. This is just another audition for the guys at the end of the bench, primarily. But for the Bucks, this game is very important. They're still jockeying for position in the Eastern Conference. Plenty of injuries for the Pelicans going into this ball game. Jose Alvarado is questionable again with his right calf soreness. Bruce Brown, right knee soreness. Eve Misi, left ankle soreness, all questionable. Um, and already they join the list of guys who are already out, including Brandon Boston, Jordan Hawkins, Herb Jones, C.J. McCollum, Trey Murphy, DeJounte Murray, Kelly Olynyk, who is out with left Achilles tendinosis, and Zion Williamson with the lower back contusion. So a lot of players will be out for the Pelicans as they try to make sure they secure that top four spot. As you know, the Pelicans are stuck between 3 and 5 now in the lottery rankings. They're 2 games behind the Charlotte Hornets and 2 games up on the Philadelphia 76ers. So we'll see how that goes. But it looks like the Pelicans will probably be locked in at number 4. We'll talk a little bit more about that later on as well. But Pelicans will face a Brooklyn team that, you know, behind Giannis Antetokounmpo has started to look very good lately. Giannis making another push to try to get the Bucks their second NBA championship. It'd be difficult to do that without Damian Lillard. They're still playing very shorthanded in a lot of ways, but their primary starting group, Kyle Kuzma, Giannis, and Brook Lopez, that's a talented front court, and that's where the Pelicans are at their weakest. And then considering the fact that if the Pelicans do not have Eve Macy or Kelly Olynyk available to them on the interior. That means you're probably going to get a start by Carlo Makovich, which means defensively the Pelicans are going to suffer. Carl's going to have to score a lot of points to offset whatever he gives up on the defensive end. Um, so it's going to be a difficult game for the Pelicans. But again, at this stage of the season, I think Pelicans fans are more concerned about getting the loss and maintaining position for the lottery than they are concerned about whether or not the Pelicans actually win this game. I mean, there's no there's no advantage to winning it, but I think what you always want to see whenever you have a game is that the players who you are looking for performance from, and that would be the 4 rookies in particular, where you're talking about Antonio Reeves, you're talking about Eve Misi, Carlo Makovic, and Keon Brooks. If you're getting good performances out of them, that's still the main thing, and you have continued to get solid performances from those rookies. The biggest problem for them is defensively. For all 4 of those guys, the biggest problems are defensively. Though Yves Missi has the best numbers when it comes to block shots and rebounds and impact defensively on that side. For him it comes down to size. For Antonio Reeves, it comes down to experience primarily and understanding what he's being asked to do on the end of the floor. For Carlo Makovic, it's awareness. He tries, but he's kind of like a cat when you got a flashlight and you can make the cat run after that flashlight. That's kind of Carlo on defense. He just runs wherever the ball is and doesn't really know what's going on defensively. And then with Keon, I think Keon, you're seeing some Najee Marshall like qualities. And I think that's the comparison that you're going to see about him most frequently, is because he's a physical player. He brings a lot of energy. He has athleticism, and he can occasionally knock down some outside shots. If he does those things, there's a place for him in the NBA. That's a good thing. I think the best thing that you can say about this season is that you found out about this Pelicans rookie class, and the development of Trey Murphy, of course, was a nice thing to see as well. But I think we all expected Trey to continue to ascend the way he has. These guys, a lot more of a question because you're talking about a late first rounder, you're talking about a second round pick, and you're talking about guys who, come from the fringes of the league. So for them to make it the way that they have so far, I think that's a good sign of optimism regarding those guys and their work ethic individually, how they want to be perceived in the NBA. Um, just when you think you're done with this stuff, it comes back. I don't want to discuss this any more than just as a news story, but Zion Williamson is back in the news, and it's unfortunate the way that he's in the news because it's not, he didn't do anything. Okay, so this isn't a Zion Williamson story if you've already heard it, but um, the mother of Zion Williamson's child was arrested in a home invasion case involving an unidentified woman who she may have viewed as a rival for Zion's affections. So the woman identified as Akima Love, 31, was arrested on Sunday, charged with home invasion and aggravated assault, as aggravated battery and stalking, according to the Kenner Police Department. Um, she allegedly shares a romantic partner with the woman described as the victim of the home invasion. She apparently egged the woman's home. She also sent her a message on Instagram and, referred to a child. Um, and she apparently went and got into the woman's house, obtained the keys to her residence, and attacked her. The address where she was arrested at is Zion Williamson's home, based on the public records that are available. Okay. So what does this mean? Zion was not named in the affidavit at all. Um, Zion may be appears from the information in this that Zion may be the father of a second child. They had their first child in 2023. The woman has shared on social media that she's pregnant and celebrating another addition to her family. She did not name the child's father, but again, she's living at Williamson's house. Um, Whew. So this, mm, you hate to see these things for Zion because again, um, this isn't per se something that he did, but it talks about his judgment and just you cannot allow these things off the court to become a problem for you on the court. And I hope that Zion can get this situation resolved because his name is back in public for the wrong reasons. And it goes to people, it pushes people to start asking questions again about his ability to lead, his ability to be mature enough to handle the responsibility of being the face of the franchise. And so you want him to make good decisions. You want him you don't want for these people to have healthy and happy lives and their children involved. So that makes it a very sensitive issue as well. Um, but you don't ever want to hear these situations publicly where your star players or any prominent figure for a company that you represent or work for or like. You don't want to see them involved in these kinds of things where they are the subject of public ridicule in some cases, and then for public scrutiny for their actions. So, um, again, I hope that this gets resolved. I hope that it get resolved peacefully, that no one gets harmed in all this, and that Zion, if he is adding another addition to his family, well, I hope it's a healthy and happy one. Um, but other than that, I feel like the only reason you address this is because it is in the news. Once it's made the news, it kind of needs to be addressed. But it's how do you do it and at what level? And I think that to be respectful of these people, the best thing you can say is like, look, let's just not have violence when it comes to children and families, and let's not have violence in general. But let's hope that Zion can move forward and get back on the track because he had such a good year on the court. Outside of missing the games, he had a good year as far as his ability, his performance, maybe his best all around year as a basketball player. So we'll see, but hopefully this drama gets resolved very, very, very quickly. um, Drama of a different sort when you talk about the Denver Nuggets, who fired their head coach and their general manager, getting rid of Mike Malone, who had been head coach for the last 10 seasons in Denver, and also letting Calvin Booth, their general manager, know that he would not have his contract renewed at the end of the season. So, um, effectively, that's firing him now. But he knows he's not going to be back. So, um, but the Mike Malone firing is really, really strange. Again, because of the timing, and we've seen two coaches now with teams headed towards the playoffs. First, it was Taylor Jenkins in Memphis, and now Mike Malone in Denver, where they've been let go before the playoffs even begin, which tells you something about the state of their relationships with their front offices. Because to not even allow the coach to finish the year and say maybe you can redeem the season by going on a run in the playoffs, they don't think that the coach can salvage anything by going into the playoffs. They don't think there's anything to be gained by letting that coach their team into the playoffs, and that they would rather have an interim head coach take their chances in the postseason than go with the coach who had been guiding them the entire season. That tells you how bad things have gotten in those situations. That's in organizations where you've had winning. So you talk about Mike Malone being 2 years ago being the first coach in Nuggets history to win that team a championship, who has several 50-win seasons, the winningest coach in the history of that franchise. To go along with, I mean, you talk about guys like legendary head coaches like Doug Moe or George Karl, and none of them had been able to get to the heights that Mike Malone had gotten. Certainly when you have Nikola Jokic, that helps, but he's been the driving force in developing Jokic throughout his career. He's the only coach that Jokic has ever had. So you wonder what that kind of impact it has there. But organizationally, you say this was a team that, again, was consistently in the top four in the West, um, but had not embraced defensive basketball. It was a struggle to get the Nuggets to play defensively, and it was a struggle when Jokic wasn't on the floor. That had been then the big problem throughout his career is that finding that fourth player. Um, and also developing players has been an issue for that team. There's been a thought of whether or not the younger players should have played more, or should the Nuggets have gone all in on some bigger names to try to build around Jokic with during the prime of his career. And folks feel like they're kind of wasting his prime. I mean, he does have 3 MVP awards. You could argue that he should deserve his fourth this season. But in the meantime, Jokic is now going to be subject to trade rumors, and you're going to wonder whether or not he's happy there. And you're talking about maybe resetting this franchise. If not Jokic leaving, then a lot of the people around him now could be up for grabs. So, do you start looking at how to take apart the carcass of the Denver Nuggets? Are some of those players going to be available? And I think that we'll have to examine whether or not who on that team, if they do become up for grabs, if they do reorganize that roster, could any of those players be a good fit? Um, Outside of Jokic, I don't think the Pelicans have a package that they could send for a player of Jokic's caliber. But do the Pelicans make a run at a Jamal Murray? Do the Pelicans make a run at Aaron Gordon? Do you try to make a run at Michael Porter Jr.? Is there somebody on the bench that you think that the Pelicans could pry away? Is it a Christian Braun? Is it someone else that you think maybe could be a target for the Pelicans? I don't know. We'll get into that and have to look at that. But for the time being, it's another head coach on the market too with experience. You've got winning coaches this season in Mike Brown, a two-time coach of the year. You've got uh, uh, Taylor Jenkins with Memphis, who's the winningest coach in Grizzlies history. And then you get the only championship winning coach in Nuggets history in Mike Malone, and now he's on the market. So I think there's a lot of talent available now for the Pelicans, and also you have a market set that, quite frankly, for head coaches is um, they understand that what the standard is becoming. The standard is win this championship within this time frame. And for Mike Malone, you I guess art is 10 years long enough to decide whether or not we can keep going forward. And I know people say, well, the timing is the thing. But again, if we were going to do it, if we feel you're no longer the guy to lead this team, why should I wait? Why should I wait? If I'm the owner and I feel like I'm already punting on this administration with this head coach, then why do I wait to fire you? And so I think that will be what Pelicans fans start to ask is with the future of Willie Green is it's time to move on. Is it time to move on? Because Willie has been with the Pelicans for 4 seasons. And of interesting note, there have been 13 head coaches, 13 different head coaches who have won a championship since 2005. That's the last 20 years. 13 head coaches over the last 20 years. Of those 13, 11 of the 13 won within their first 4 years of being the head coach. The two that didn't, Pat Riley, who was in his uh, ninth season with the Miami Heat when he won the title with the Heat. And then the other is Mike Malone, who was in his eighth season in Denver when he won the championship. Every other one of those coaches won within their first 4 seasons. The first time coaches, even more so. Of those 13 coaches in the last 20 years, 6 of those were first time head coaches. Most of those won in their first year. The average for a first time coach was just over 3 years to winning a championship in the last 20 years. So the history seems to indicate that if you hire a first time coach, if you don't get success quickly, then it's time to move on. It shows that it's very rare for experienced coaches to take a long time to win a championship. And I felt like going beyond 20 years changes too much of the dynamics of the way the NBA works, as far as coaching hires and wins and salary structure and all those types of things. So if you look in the last 20 years, the data seems to tell you like 4 years is about the cycle you need to have for a head coach. And here you are at 4 years into the Willie Green era, and you have no playoff series wins, and you're at the bottom of the Western Conference. There's only, a couple of teams worse than you in the entire league. There's only one team in the West worse than you, and that's the Utah Jazz, who tried to be bad. So I think that it speaks very much to the Pelicans' decision making. I think that it's becoming inevitable that Willie Green um, is going to lose his job at the end of the season. I think when you look at all the data, when you look at the coaches who've been fired around the league and what's now available to David Griffin in the front office, what kind of talent is available for them to go out and pursue. And I think again, you go out and you get an experienced head coach at this point because a rookie head coach, you've done that. And you're not ready to make that jump. I think a lot of times when you see these first time head coaches with championship teams, these are teams that are in position and they need a new kick, boom, to jump up to that next level. That's not where the Pelicans are. What they need is somebody, a veteran, to come in and do a complete reset on the culture again. You're going to have to find the direction and the identity of this franchise and this team. So whoever the next coach is going to have to come in and do that. And they're going to have to be somebody who that you anticipate is either going to win it quickly in those first four, or somebody good enough for the long haul to win it in eight. And I think those you have options. I think Taylor Jenkins is an option. I think Mike Brown is an option. I think you know, um, these are all options now on the floor, on the table for the Pelicans to go out and look at. And I think that they have to do that due diligence and try to find the best coaching mind for this franchise. They've got to find someone who gives them a competitive advantage when they step onto the floor in some area, whether it's in strategy, whether it's in game coaching, just adjusting in those types of things, whether it's organizationally, whether it's in hiring of assistants, you have to have some kind of advantage. And right now, I don't think anyone would say that the Pelicans have an advantage on the bench. I'm not saying you have incompetence. I'm not going to go as far as to say that, but I'll just say things have not worked. And that's the long and the short of it, is that things have not worked. And if the results are that they have not worked, then it's time after 4 years, which I think is a reasonable evaluation period, to say let's move on. Especially when you have a pool of talented candidates, talented and experienced coaching candidates for David Griffin to choose from. And I think it's increasingly likely to think that David Griffin will be back for another season and Willie Green will not. And if that's the case, then let's end this as soon as possible. As soon as the last day of the regular season, let's go ahead and move on, and let's have David Griffin say that Willie Green is no longer the head coach, and immediately start looking for a new head coach. Immediately, like this should not drag on. There shouldn't be weeks after the regular season. When we get to Sunday afternoon, and that's the final game of the season, I think by Monday we should know Willie Green's fate. If we don't, then we have a problem. We have a problem. We have a problem. But that is my opinion, and that the Pelicans need to go ahead and get this thing resolved. All right, again, the last road game of the season for the Pelicans, who are 8-21 on the road this year. Um, excuse me, 8-21 against the Eastern Conference. I don't think they're eight. They're not that good. They're worse than that on the road. Sorry, they only have 7 road wins this season. So the final road game of the season for the New Orleans Pelicans against the Milwaukee Bucks. Y'all check that out. We'll be back tomorrow to recap that one and get you ready for the back-to-back. The Pelicans come right back, play at home on Friday um, before closing out the season at the Smoothie King Center on Sunday. So make sure you like, make sure you comment, subscribe. Let me know what you think. Put your questions in the comments below, and I'll answer them as best I can. Until the next time, I am David Grubb, and you can check me out on social media at DM Grub, or you can visit thebirdrights.com to get more information about the New Orleans Pelicans. So until the next time, y'all have a great day, and let's go Pels.